All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Meadows Place City Council special session. It's Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Hate that year. It is 6 p.m. Item A is a call to order, and we do have a quorum of council present. We have a quorum of P&Z present. So we're going to move on to item B. This is to conduct a joint public hearing before the City Council, City Meadows Place, and the Planning Zoning Commission to hear any and all persons desiring to be heard on electronic signs in the City of Meadows Place. Okay, this has been an issue that's been going on for some time. Go ahead and turn Terry off. Because he has no interest in this. I'm teasing, Terry. I see you there. But this has been going on for quite some time. We've had different responses, and I want to say that as we get forward and move into this, anybody that wants to speak out of the public, I'm assuming, can do that? Yes. And how they do. Okay. Well, I'm opening the meeting right now. So we would like to be here. Anybody desiring to be heard concerning electronic signs, speak now. No? Now we can. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else desiring to be heard concerning electronic signs?
I'll take Terry's counterpoint. This is Rick Stagley, 12327 Scottsdale Drive. Personally, I don't feel that electronic signs are needed by our businesses, by our schools, by the city. I've seen many cities that don't allow them. They're usually your upper scale cities that don't allow them. Bel Air doesn't allow them. Sugar Land doesn't allow them. If your business is hinging on an electronic sign, you're not going to make it anyway.
Point, counterpoint. Anyone else?
How about the electronic sign we have at the Nissan dealer?
John, that's a good question, and I had this marked. It's covered in the ordinance, and that's a specific area, and it is addressing that on Highway 59. It's on page number 7. I don't know what it's. Fifth page back. It's fifth page of the sign ordinance under exceptions, and it's prior code 24-1009, ordinance 85-036, passed in 1985, okay, which allowed them to do that right along 59.
Well, I thought they came to us for some kind of variance. Yeah. They came to us for a variance, which is how we got 30 seconds of fame every 5 minutes on that
Yeah,
side.
this was not the 85 rule.
The 85, it came up.
We did a special
Yes, we did.
exception for them.
Yes, we did.
Just wanted to bring it up in case somebody else brings it.
Because we were talking to them about a trade-off on using that sign for 10% of the signage.
Now, we got that because we allowed them to have that. sign.
Yep, that's exactly right. But it was because they were in that front line area.
Well, that's why we allowed it, but it wasn't part of the 85 rule.
Correct. This 85 rule sets them aside as a special industrial district.
It's got yeah, I agree that it's got a different zoning code.
Correct.
Regardless, we cut a deal.
Yes.
And if you're going to cut a deal for one, it's kind of problematic if you're going to disallow the signs unless.
If they could have it up there,
Huh?
and the debate was, can they have it up there? Okay?
Right, and we said you can have it if we get whatever 2 seconds.
Basically, we allowed it on the 59 frontage. But
Right.
at the time, it was said that we weren't going to allow it other places.
Correct.
Now, that was a different council, it was a different P and Z. Any P and Z, any council or P and Z cannot hold a future council to anything. That future council always has the option to change what those ordinances are.
That's correct.
Was that a special use permit we issued?
No, I think we wrote it into the zoning ordinance.
Any kind of studies done on brightness and things like that, because I'm sure there's some folks. Has there been any studies on brightness of the signs? Maybe they're too rude. Some people might not like them because they're bright and glaring. I don't know.
Yeah, John, that's part of that 200-page thing that Terry was talking about. And yeah, they number of pixels per foot, all that kind of stuff is covered, including brightness. And the more expensive signs, you can adjust that brightness as you go according to daylight, dark, etc. And you'll see some of these things in the daytime that are almost knock your eyes out. That's, you can see them 37 miles at night, and they're horrible. And some don't. They just look like looking at a TV screen because they're adjusted as they go for light exposure, etc. Thank you.
If, in the event that this change is allowed, I think what we do, John, is look at other agencies that have that and come up with a like ordinance, whether that's TxDOT, whether it's another city that does allow them.
I just don't want to get involved in, big rude signs, it's just in your face type stuff.
So to remind everyone that when the sign went in at Kirkwood and 59 in Stafford, we actually got complaints. I got complaints from residents about that and said the city should find a way to stop it. I explained to them that that's in Stafford, and somebody said, "Well, annex it," and we're like, "You can't annex another city." I wish we'd have had more residents on the call, give us more feedback, plus or minus.
This may generate at least some conversation. So, P&Z members, if y'all hear anything, please feed us back. It's my contention I'm going to play Chris Gollican, throw a hand grenade in the middle of this mix. I think right now is a perfect example, Rick, and I'm going to take a different side. I think we should take, and I'm with you on the business side. It's not imperative, and I don't think it's absolutely critical. I agree with Terry that we need to look at it, but I think you have we're responsible as a city and for public welfare and safety. business community's not. They're sitting there generating a profit, and that's okay. But I think different rules can, and I believe should apply. And I think today is a great example. If, for instance, school was open, school could keep changing those messages as things changed during the day. The city could change its messages as things change. And right now, I think it's a great example, and I would like to have that capability, or for somebody to sit up here and say, hey, we just went to red alert at the county. We just went to level 2 in the hurricane. We need to evacuate, those types of things. And I'd like to see those split, to give government one set of rules to where they can have it, and I'll fade the heat, point at me, and then the other side sit down and say no. But we could also, and I'm throwing y'all under the bus for P&Z, ever smile, let a business apply and let them go to P&Z on an individual basis.
I don't agree that government should operate under different rules than the businesses. I don't think that's a good way of operating, but that is one viewpoint.
But we've got different responsibilities, that's my
As to putting messages out there like school closed and hurricanes, you're going to rely on one fixed point sign when we've got Facebook, Twitter,
I hear you.
Code Red. That's how you need to be getting those messages out.
And we do. All right. Somebody else? Oh, yeah, he does, and that means he wants to speak. Can you unmute him? Or does he have to unmute himself? Oh, there he is. Yes. Really?
We need better mics. Fix this. No, we need mics. We need to get it fixed.
We had them out there, and came to the conclusion we're going to start with getting longer necks and see how that works, because you got to be this close. Okay. All right, Terry. Okay, thank you for that. We'll try to do better. Okay, so if everyone has spoken, or if no one else desires to speak, I now close this public hearing on amending concerning electronic signs in the City of Meadows Place. We'll now move on to the next joint public hearing. This is item C on the council agenda. I don't know what agenda it is on you guys, but conduct a joint public hearing before the City Council in the City of Meadows Place, Texas, and the Planning and Zoning Commission to hear any and all persons desiring to be heard concerning carports in the City of Meadows Place. I now open this public hearing. Everyone desiring to speak at this hearing should sign in on the public hearing sheet or raise your hand on the... All right, Ms. Lindquist, you got 30 seconds. Thank you very much, and I will have to say that you may not be an artist or an architect, but you did a great job, and I think you need to be complimented. All right, we do have a comment, however, regarding carports. Rick, did you want to?
Hopefully everybody can hear me with this mic. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, the state legislature took away our ability to determine building materials. Therefore, if we allow carports, we can't say that it has to fall under any of these criteria. They could come in with 2x2 plastic pipe and, just sheet metal, and we would not be able to do a thing about it. So,
But is the issue here carports? I thought the issue was the lines on how far you can
Different
build.
issue.
Huh?
That's a different issue later down.
That's D.
Oh, okay. Because I thought Ms. Lindquist was not talking about a carport.
No, she's talking about a carport.
Terry Henley, quit sharing your screen, please.
Put your pants on.
All right, see you later.
So, unfortunately, like I said, the legislature has taken away our ability to determine types of materials. City administrator did just say that it does have to meet windstorm, so that might take care of some of my concern. However, I don't know where we're going to go with that. I've heard people are going to try to get that legislation overturned in this next session. I don't know if that's going to occur.
One question I have, and this somewhat goes with our setback, is if they were, say you were to build a carport, porte cochere, whatever it may be, does that count as the lot setback? Is that a permanent structure that you can't go closer than the 25 feet?
So I think the short answer is generally yes, particularly if it's determined to be an accessory structure that's attached to your primary structure. It is true, Rick's right, that House Bill 2439 basically prohibited our ability to determine the aesthetics associated with these types of things. We can make sure that it's built to code, but we can't say that it has to be bricked or that it has to be shingled or that kind of thing. If it does tie into the roof line, for example, or if it does in some fashion attach to the structure, then typically, yes, we would consider that a part of the structure itself, and so it would have to meet those setback guidelines. Now, that said, typically a carport is an accessory structure, and as you guys might recall, well, I know you know from the ordinance, an accessory structure is 2 feet off the side and rear setbacks. But I believe that, and I have to go back and double check this, but on the front side, you still got to adhere to that building line. So, short answer is, I believe, yes.
Okay.
Well, I could build a carport that was attached to my house, to the roof. It was not an accessory structure, as long as it was within the setback line.
Correct.
So if the setback line was changed, and it was part of the house, then you're off to the races to build whatever you want, because we can't prohibit the types of material.
You could, that's correct. So what kind of precipitated this more than anything was we did have an applicant that came in and submitted for a carport. And this particular carport was tied into the roof line. It had shingles, it was a pitched roof type carport, but the question then came up, is this something the city wants? Is this something the city should regulate? Right now, your code is absolutely silent as to carports in general. So should somebody come in with a carport that's been engineered to meet windstorm and is structurally sound, then they could get the permit to go ahead and build those carports. where we are right now. I think the question in front of council is that what you still want, right? Or do you want to go ahead and find a way to regulate carports? Because generally, you could, as a council, put something in your ordinance that says carports are prohibited, period. And we could enforce that. But it's up to you guys. We just can't go in there and say carports are allowed so long as you clad the thing with brick and you make it this color and you make sure that it has hardy plank on it or something to that effect. You can't do that. But if it complies with the International Building Code, which we've adopted, then we have to give them the building permit if it complies.
So this is an all or nothing deal on carports. Is that correct?
No.
Well,
I heard that if it's part of the house, it's not an accessory structure, and it's within the lines, the pot lines, then nobody needs a permit. We can't prevent it. They can come in and get a permit today.
yeah, you still need a permit.
Right.
And that's the tough call, is that we as a staff would have to say, you know, if you're building it into the roof line, if you're attaching it to the house, it's clear that it's a part of that structure, then yes, we would say you need to adhere to those setbacks. If this is something that was standalone, it had 4 posts on it with some metal, but it was engineered, and it was tied down and it was anchored, we could say, well, it's not attached to the structure. That's the tough call we've got. Now, what you could do as a council is you could just flat out say, we don't want carports in town. And you could go ahead and put a law in that says we will not give a building permit for carports. But, again, it's y'all's call. So.
I guess the thing I keep coming back to is the 25-foot setback. It would still have to adhere to that for the front of the house. So that would prohibit a lot of people from doing this, even if it was considered accessory.
Council, it's been brought to my attention that this is a public hearing, not a discussion. And I was just getting geared up. So, dang it. We need to call an
That's the end of my public comment.
If anybody else has comment. Okay, do we have anyone else who wishes or desires to be heard regarding carports? They were great, too.
I think the issue...
Yes, Terry, go ahead. Hundreds. Yes. Okay, Terry, thank you for that. Terry, thank you for that comment. This is not a discussion item. This is to hear comments on them. You've just made them separating the carport from a permanent structure. And that was part of the discussion that was taking place that you couldn't hear. So thank you. Just want to let you know that. Correct. That's what we're here for. You're welcome.
Courtney, the audio we can hear really well on the live stream on the website. Is that the same audio that's going to the Zoom call? Okay, so that's the issue. Okay.
That's why they can't hear us on this side.
We should just stop doing this crazy. We should just stop doing Zoom calls. They're not working. I'm not convinced they're working there.
It will. Okay, with that, I'm hearing nobody else. Then I now close this public hearing on carports. Moving on then to the next one, which is item D, and whatever number y'all have. Discussion regarding platting and setbacks in the city of Meadows Place. Now, a problem between our ordinance and the plat at the county came up, and it needs to be resolved. Nick has prepared a presentation to help me better understand this. So, Nick, I'm going to turn this over to you. No. I do now.
Everybody got one? Everybody but our P&Z?
Can you see this, Terry?
I will get 1 inch from the microphone. As uncomfortable as this is. All right. All right. So, thank you, Mayor. So, from time to time, staff and just our daily examination of our ordinances finds things in the code that we think council and P&Z need to pay attention to and look at, perhaps because you might need to change what's in here. In this case, we found a bit of a conflict between what's in your ordinances and what's actually out there in our subdivision plats. It was all precipitated as we were looking through some plan sets. We found that the setbacks that are in your zoning ordinance don't mesh with the setbacks that are in the code, and I'll talk, or in the plats, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So we were going to put it on the big screen, but this works just as well. If you look at slide number 2, what does our ordinance say? So your zoning ordinance, which is chapter 153 of your code, basically regulates a lot of different structural things like setbacks, lot sizes, the height of your buildings, the minimum floor area of those buildings, etc. Those also vary by zoning categories. You know, we have multiple different zoning categories in town. If you look at slide 3, you can kind of see those zoning categories. R1, which is what you might call the largest lot zoning category in town. It also encompasses the most houses in town, is in that yellow. R2 is kind of down the bottom. It's that grayish area, a little bit denser housing. And R3, way up top, which is something we hardly ever talk about because, quite frankly, it's such a small portion of the community, is way up there, kind of your townhome type developments. If you look at slide 4, if you look deep into the zoning ordinance and start reading the different regulations for these different zoning categories, you'll find that they're a little bit different. So if you stack them up next to each other, you look at R1, your minimum lot area is about 6,000 square feet. That'd be basically a 60 by 100 foot lot. On R2, you're getting down to 5,000 square feet, or maybe a 50 by 100 square foot lot on average. You can see then the minimum floor area is the same, your maximum building heights are the same, but then you get to the front setbacks. On an R1, our code, our ordinance, has a front setback of 18 feet. R2, it's 15 feet. Side setbacks, you have to be 5 feet from the side setback line, your lot line. On R2, it's kind of interesting because on one side of your lot, it's 0 lot, you're basically on the lot line. On the other side, you're 8 feet back. So if you can kind of imagine a house that's sitting on the lot line and then 8 feet from the other side of the lot line, right? You get down to their side street setbacks, which is essentially a corner lot, right, that's on 2 streets. You can see on R1 it's 10 feet. On R2, you've got 20 feet or 15 feet with an attached garage, is the way it's written in the ordinance. And for those accessory structures, your garages, that kind of thing, on R1, they have to be 2 feet from your property line. In R2, they have to be 5 feet. Maximum lot coverage is a little bit different, too. That basically means how much of your structure can cover the actual footprint of the lot. So the next question on slide 5 is, what do our plats say in town? As you guys know, a plat is simply an instrument that is recorded at the county that essentially subdivides land. It tells you what goes where, basically. It tells you where your lots are, where your streets are, where your easements are, where your rights-of-ways are. You have a number of plats in town. The ones that really popped up, and the reason we're here in front of you today is because we really want to talk about some of these residential subdivisions, these residential plats, primarily Meadow Glen and the Meadows. The next slide, which I know is a little bit of an eye test because it's so small on this piece of paper, is a little bit of a segment of Meadow Glen, Section 1. Now, that was platted way back in 1978. As you guys recall, this town didn't become a town until 1983, right? So this was actually platted at the county before your zoning ordinance even existed, okay? But this is an idea of what the plat says. This is recorded at the county. The next slide, on slide 7, is a little bit of a closer up look at that plat. This is actually Meadow Glen Section 2, so it's another section of the same subdivision or same area. It was platted a few years later, but it's roughly the same. And you can kind of see Section 2, which is in the R2 zoning classification, which is that kind of smaller lot zoning classification. You can see the way they structured this. You can see those lots are about 50 feet wide. You can see that on one side, there is no setback. It's on the lot line, just like your R2 says it should be. And then on the other side, it's set back 10 feet from the lot. Now, do you guys remember what our ordinance says about R2? Our ordinance says 8 feet. This plat shows 10 feet. So there's a discrepancy there, right? If you look at number 8, the Meadows Section 1, which is another large plat in town, is in the R1 zoning classification. And our police chief just asked me if the meeting started. Section 1, which was platted way back in 1968. Next slide, a little bit of a close-up version of that. You can see it's a little bit blurry. It's an older plat, but you can see that the building line on the front side is 25 feet. Now, this is R1. If you remember back in the zoning ordinance, the front setback was 18 feet. Okay? So you're seeing that the plat has a 25-foot building line, a little more restrictive. Our ordinance is only 18 feet, less restrictive. On the rear side, you've got a 16-foot utility easement. Well, anytime you typically see a 16-foot utility easement on the back, it means that one neighbor gets 8 of it and the other neighbor gets the other 8, right? It splits between the two. That's the extent of which the plat talks about setbacks, right? You can't build inside of an easement. So basically, from a platting perspective, we know that you got to be at least 8 feet back from that property line because there's an easement there in the Meadows, all the sections of the Meadows. Not a good sign. So number 10, slide 10, is really where the rubber meets the road because we start comparing what your plats that are recorded at the county and they are legal instruments that are at the county level say and what our ordinances say. So on R1, if you go to that second bullet, we have an 18-foot front setback in that zoning category. Your plat says 25. R1 has a 5-foot side setback. Your plats don't give any side setbacks. And that's not uncommon. Most plats don't usually give you a side setback. You need to look at the city for that. But if you keep looking down, on that last bullet on R1, the rear setback in our ordinance is 15 feet from the back. There is no rear setback on the plat. However, we do have that 8-foot utility easement. So if I came into town, I never opened the city's code book, and I just went off the plat to go ahead and build a house, which some of us may do, I wouldn't know about that 15-foot rear setback, right? R2, similar. Front setback on R2 zoning is 15, but if you look back at that plat that's in the R2, that front setback's sitting at 25 feet. R2, on the sides, it's 0 and 8, but the plat shows 0 and 10. On the back, they just so happen to match up because on the R2 it has an 8-foot rear setback, and on the plat itself there's an 8-foot UE, so they match. The next slide is basically an overlay of what our plat shows versus what our zoning ordinance shows. The red is the zoning ordinance, the blue is what the plat shows. So if I were to come in and I were to go ahead and build a house based on the plat, it would basically be bound by what's in blue. If I wanted to look at our city code and build that same house, it would have to be bound by what's in red. So you can see how they don't really mesh. Same thing on slide 12.
I just want to add a point here. Basically, if you had a fire and your house burned down, the way our ordinances read, you might not be able to put your same house back the way it was on the same lot.
Right. Yeah, and we can talk about that for sure in a second. The slide 13 is a really good slide because it asks the question, well, what do the lawyers say? Well, we asked that question, and here's what they say. The more stringent restriction will control. What does that mean? Well, since the plat is basically what some people like to call a restrictive covenant, in other words, it runs with the land, and your zoning ordinance cannot override that restrictive covenant, it basically means that since the plat is more restrictive, in other words, that setback's 25 feet, not 18, it's the plat that rules. So if you're asking yourself, does our ordinance have any teeth here? I think the short answer to that question is no. So knowing that and knowing what the ordinances say, when somebody comes in and they want to build a house, they're really going off of the more restrictive setbacks. But it bites them both ways because on the rear, even though the plat doesn't have a rear setback, only the 8 feet, our ordinance says 15 feet. Well, what do the lawyers say? They say the more stringent restriction will control. So they're getting bit both ways, right? They're getting bit by the more restrictive city ordinance and the more restrictive plat on the front side.
Nick, just to clarify my understanding of this, they would have to apply to the 15 feet because that is the more restrictive.
Correct.
Instead of the 8 feet.
Correct.
That's what you mean by getting bit both front and back.
Right. Because they're having to go more restrictive on the front, which is plat, more restrictive on the back, which is ordinance. And so it basically shrinks your house.
Can we change the plats and, globally?
Wait just a minute.
And I know Rick is chomping at the bit on that one because he knows the answer. So
Well, I got asked the question.
here's the challenge with changing a plat. I don't want to steal your thunder. Are you sure? I know you want to say this.
Go ahead.
To change the plat, you need 100% of the owners and their lien holders. Good luck.
Yeah, it ain't happening. No.
So everybody who
That's the
owns
caveat.
or is a lien holder has to sign that plat.
Okay, well, what about the ordinances? Could we make our ordinances, as restrictive or make them match?
Let's let Nick run down through the amending remedies. Look
No,
down
yeah,
at the bottom.
Okay.
we're almost there. We're getting there.
Slide 14.
So here's some remedies. The challenge with the plat is that once it's platted, once it's originally platted, typically it's got one owner, right, the developer. That's easy. Well, once it starts getting sold off, you got about 150 owners. Good luck, like Rick said. So here's some remedies. There is an option in Section 212 of your local government code, which is a state code, that does allow cities to approve what are called amending plats. Now, most of the time, amending plats are essentially meant to correct things like Scrivener's errors, misspellings, somebody's name's wrong, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that if it's that simple, you don't necessarily want to go through the whole rigmarole of going through P&Z, getting a vote, etc. It could be done what's called administratively. They basically pick somebody to go ahead and approve those plats. Once it's approved, you go record it at the county, and it's amended. They do have the option in an amending plat to modify a setback. However, to do that, you as a council and as a P&Z have to choose somebody, either an employee or an officer of the city, to basically make that call. Okay? That's a big deal. So it is an option, but I'll tell you that while I've experienced cities doing amending plats for things like misspellings, I've never seen one do one where you change a setback before. The other big caveat to this is that with an amending plat, you don't necessarily have to notify the neighboring property owners. And so you could do this administratively without the neighbors knowing about it. And that's an important point. You can do it. It's doable, but I just want you to know that in advance. So all these bullets just basically say what I just said.
We can allow partial replats, correct?
We can, and a replat is a remedy. There's basically three remedies here. Amending is one. A replat is another one. A partial replat is another one. The challenge with a replat of a lot outside of a subdivision is that eventually you're going to have a bunch of one-lot subdivisions in town. And it's going to get pretty darn confusing, right? Because it's going to be, so-and-so's 60-foot lot subdivision out of a huge 1968 platted subdivision, right? And so you do that enough times, really what you're doing is you're creating one-lot subdivisions to basically amend setbacks. I mean, it doesn't really do much good for the city because it gets really confusing, and essentially you're asking somebody to go spend a lot of money on a surveyor and to go through the process of replatting a 60-foot lot, calling it the Stagley Estate, and you go record it as a one-lot subdivision. It's doable.
So at the county, we're seeing a lot of replats in Fullbrook. A lot of people bought 2 lots and then put their house across the 2 lot lines. But now they're paying for 2 homeowners' fees because they've got 2 lots. So they're coming in, replatting as 1 lot so they can reduce their homeowner fees to 1. We expect eventually the HOA is just going to double their fees. But,
Yeah.
one thing or another.
If in the life of Meadows Place in the future, we start seeing people that want to come in and they want to buy 2 60-foot lots, 2 50-foot lots, bulldoze the 2 houses and put 1 right in the middle, we will have to talk about replatting. We will have to talk about what do you do when somebody wants to build over a lot line. That's going to have to be a discussion. The third remedy is simply to amend your ordinance to comply with what the plat says. Right? So you look at what the plat shows, the 25-foot setback, the no setback on the rear. You basically make your ordinances match what the plat says, and then there's no conflict. Right now, staff is struggling because what you have is you have a city ordinance you got to pay attention to, a plat you got to pay attention to, and they don't speak well to each other, right? And so what you might want to look at doing, and ultimately since this lives in the zoning ordinance, P&Z is going to have to give you guys a recommendation on what to do. You might want to look at that ordinance, amend it in such a way that it complies with what's on the plat, and then we know for sure what we're working with. Because in most cases, in a lot of cases, as people come in and they want to modify their houses, change their houses, build new houses in Meadows Place, many of them are not going to go crack open your code book. They're just going to look at the survey, which typically just takes its cues from the plat. So they're not going to find that 15-foot rear setback, and they're going to get caught. And we try to avoid surprises. So that's kind of where we are right now. I don't like bringing this kind of stuff to you guys, but
I love it.
To allow for a replat, which creates a little subdivision within a subdivision, you said we had to appoint an officer?
or an employee, yeah.
Or an employee. And what is the responsibility of this person?
That person would essentially unilaterally be able to approve a change to a plat within the bounds of Chapter 212. So correcting misspellings or changing setbacks.
And then this person would have authority to approve a plat and then go refile it with the county.
Correct.
Now,
It would not have to go through P&Z. It would not have to go through council.
the county just accepts it?
Yep. It's state law.
Nick, I have a question on that because I was sitting there listening to, as Steve was saying that, do we have any ability to amend what they can or can't do? Or is it written in state law, this is what they can do?
Talking about the person who
Yes.
does the amending plats? Yes. I mean, I suppose that as a council, you could basically create some parameters, right? You could say, here's your box. You can approve, well, you're asking a legal question.
That's all right.
But, I mean,
Is this person appointed for a term? And then
it's up to you guys. You can set it up by ordinance and say the mayor, the city administrator, the whoever it is, shall hereby be designated as the person that can do amending plats. We just don't have anything right now in our codes that allows for this process. State law lets you do it, but we don't have a roadmap at the city level to say who does it.
And what's the downside to this?
It's you're giving somebody the latitude to make some decisions you may
Yeah,
disagree
I
with.
get that part, but
You know,
to replat, if someone makes logical decisions, then it's not costing us any money or
No.
administration fees. Or,
and the once in a few months or once in a year time when somebody wants to amend a setback because they want to build their dream home or something, then council really never sees it. They never have any visibility because all that stuff runs through the staff. And eventually we give them a building permit, and if they change a setback, then it's done at our level, not at the city council level. So I will say that there's some sensitivity to that, right? Because the perception is that that person gets to decide. And oh, by the way, the neighbors never saw it. Yeah, not very often. No. As we age, if we get into a situation where people want to start really modifying houses or building new houses or that kind of thing, chances are they're going to run up against setbacks that they disagree with. And that's where staff's going to look for some direction.
what do other, I've seen other cities, or like the Heights or in West U, what are they doing?
I think Rick might want to have something to say about that.
So whenever I've got a vacancy, I'm the one that has to go down to Houston Planning Commission and sit there and listen to those things. If it complies with Chapter 42, which is the city's code, it is a shall approve item. Even though you sit there and listen to it, and we have commissioners that will vote against it, if the overall commission would vote against something that's a shall approve item, the city attorney's probably going to overrule them and say it's approved. So I mean,
I'm talking more about the process, like in those areas, like in the Heights, and they're building right up to that lot line, and they're building 3 or 4.
as long as it complies with Chapter 42,
Well, but how did they change the plat? That's kind of what I'm asking. Did they assign?
Somebody applies to the city. They say, I want this amending plat. They have an amending plat form that basically they
One
sign.
guy? For the
Yeah.
entire city of Houston that approves
I don't know about
changes?
Houston, but
well, I mean, you've got the chairperson, and they've got a staff of about a dozen.
So it's not, we could appoint one person with staff, a volunteer staff, that would take input, but at the end of the day, the chair has ultimate authority to replat.
yeah.
Is that what-
So to add even more confusion to this, what I don't want to do, but I got to. Sometimes people will say, how come I can't go get a variance? What's your Board of Adjustment do? Well, the answer to that question is yes, you can ask for a variance, but only if it violates your city ordinance. You can't get a variance from the plat. So if I want to violate the rear setback, that 15 foot, which is in your city code, I could ask the Board of Adjustment that question. But if you see on number 16, the challenge with that is they have to determine whether or not you have an unnecessary hardship. And that's going to be tough to prove because you can see on that third bullet, that's basically the criteria for an unnecessary hardship. You can't self-impose an unnecessary hardship. You can't build a house or say you want to build a house
For variance?
for a variance through the BOA. But if somebody wants to violate that front setback, which is established by your plat, then the BOA would not be the appropriate party to go through in order to.
And so again, we come down to, we got two vehicles being driven by two different people sitting in the same area.
But it sounds to me, Nick, that the only way somebody wants to buy 2 lots and build a house is to do this little sheriff guy who approves plats.
You can do that, or you can replat, which, quite frankly, I wouldn't recommend because it gets messy.
100% of the vote, right?
A partial replat only requires the owner of the parcel that's being replatted. If you want to replat the entire section, that's the one that takes the 100%.
What's the first one again?
It's a partial replat, and only you and your lien holder have to sign off on it. You have to notify, depending on which code it is, you got to notify the neighbors within a certain distance, hold a public hearing, then it would get voted on.
My house, it's just not a matter of me making a change. I gotta
Nope.
Oh, don't ever do that. Okay, I want to just throw this out. Our Zoom is ending in 8 minutes. We made a mistake. Set it for an hour instead of 2. Secondly, I want to ask this question. If we amend the ordinance to match the plat, does all this stuff basically go away?
Well, it would from a staff standpoint because we now don't have 2 rule books to go by. We have 1. But the real question from a legislative standpoint for you guys is, do I want a 25-foot setback on every lot in town?
Or do I want to build a house over 2 lots?
Or do I want, yeah, that's going to be a bigger discussion because we're going to have to start talking about building over lot lines. And will the city allow you to build over lot lines? If not, then we got to set up a replat process to handle that. But really the question we have right now is on one lot, if somebody comes in, wants to build, modify a house, right now your front setback's at 25, your rear's at 15, and those 2 rules come out of 2 different rule books.
Council, my recommendation would be that we change our ordinances to match the plats.
Okay, that comes up in the regular meeting, does it not? No.
Well, we're setting a public hearing, I think.
Okay, so we've talked about this. I don't think we need to go any further with that. Rick, I think that's exactly right. And I got to tell you, I'm so impressed by how intelligent all y'all people sounded. I really am. So with that, I'm going to move on to
One more.
P&Z. Say, do y'all have any questions or comments?
Oh, I just have a question.
Okay, well, you have to talk into your microphone to hear it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so if we match the plats and ordinances, in case of Section 1, you got a 25-foot front setback and a 15-foot rear. What if you have structure that's already on that 15-foot?
No, the revision would go to 8 foot. Or actually, it would take out the rear
Okay.
setback, and it would just be ruled by the utility easement.
Just the easement.
It'll be
Okay.
the 8-foot utility easement.
What do we need to do to bring the front building line closer to the street? I'm thinking
That's a
ahead if
whole
somebody-
different ballgame.
Flat problem.
Yeah, it's a plat problem.
Okay, because somebody's going to want to build a McMansion.
Horses then violate your plat,
Ultimately, we do.
even with no ordinances?
So the city would, you can also be sued by your neighbor for violating the plat.
Oh, yeah,
P&Z, anything? Thank y'all for being here. Thank you, P&Z members on the phone who joined us telemagically. And I'm moving on to item E, which is adjournment. To have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Rick, second by Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously.